worries. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I don't have my gavel today, but I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Roll call.
Commissioner Shu?
I'm here.
Present.
Commissioner Stanek?
Here.
Excellent. Why don't we go ahead and move on to the approval of minutes from the regular meeting of November 7th, 2019. Are there any changes? If not, I am looking for a motion to approve.
I take a motion.
I second.
Excellent. We can move to a vote. Excellent. The minutes pass unanimously. Now we will move on to oral communications. Oral communications is the part of the meeting for residents of Cupertino and, well, anybody to come up and speak to the commissioners on something that is not on the agenda item. I don't believe we have any blue cards today, but I will give about 10 seconds to see if we have any. No? Seeing as we don't have any blue cards, we will go ahead and move on. I'm actually going to move business item number 5 to the top. That is the to receive the presentation and provide feedback to First Lego League Urban Green Sheep regarding improvements to the ponds in Memorial Park. So if we can start with business item number 5.
Hi, I'm Jason. Hi, I'm Naoka, and I go to Kennedy. So does Jason.
I'm Aaron, and I also go to Kennedy.
I'm Nathan. I go to Miller.
I'm Ryan, and I also go to Miller.
So we are a team, and we participate in a competition called First Lego League. So in First Lego League, there are 3 aspects to the competition. Number 1 is robot, number 2 is project, and number 3 is core values. For the robot, we have to program and build a robot to solve missions, Lego missions. And for the project, we have to find a problem and solve it. For core values just makes sure that we work well together as a team, and we work well with other teams too. So we're here today to talk about our project. We're in this year's theme is City Shaper, so we were asked to identify a public space or building, and so we chose Memorial Park.
So Memorial Park is a large park in Cupertino, but it doesn't appeal to all ages, mostly to little kids because of the playgrounds, and the ponds are not being used and don't look nice.
So these are pictures of Memorial Park before and after the drought.
Memorial Park is underutilized because its space is mostly taken by dried up ponds. The ponds have been empty since 2014 because of the drought, and they look pretty bad. Even though the drought ended, the city of Cupertino has not refilled the ponds because of several reasons. One being that the pipes no longer work because they haven't been used in such a long time. 2, because water conservation is ongoing since even though the drought ended, we're not totally in the clear yet. And 3, the pond water attracts a lot of geese, and they poop all over the place. They leave their droppings all over the place, and it's not very nice to look at.
So recreational opportunities at Memorial Park don't appeal to a wide demographic. For example, older kids and adults don't go to little kid playgrounds. People that do not have, forget to bring, or do not own their own sports equipment find Memorial Park very boring and do not go very often.
So our proposal is to convert the dried up ponds into activity areas, as well as have a sports equipment locker to provide residents with sports equipment. This will utilize the wasted space of the dried up ponds, as well as encourage exercise and make Memorial Park appeal to a wider demographic.
So this is a map of our proposals, and it shows before the ponds, and then it shows after and what we plan to put in the ponds. So we have both long-term and short-term proposals. The short-term proposals require less construction and are easier to put in, and the long-term proposals are more long-term and they require more construction. So our first short-term proposal that we could add is concrete ping pong tables that would appeal to adults and seniors, especially because there's a senior center near Memorial Park. And then we have the concrete cornhole, which would appeal to younger kids and teens. Then there's the reading area with free book exchanges that anyone could borrow books from. We also wanted to add game tables with chess, checkers, backgammon, etc. that would entertain adults, kids, seniors, and everyone. Mini golf is our next proposal that would entertain adults and children. Concrete foosball that would entertain everyone. Our next proposal is pool tables that we could add. Shuffleboard tables. And those are our short-term proposals.
The long-term proposals are ones that would take more construction. We have things that include things like skateboard parks that could appeal to older kids, an advanced playground also for older kids, exercise stations for mainly seniors, a pickleball court for anyone who wants to play on it, wall ball generally for kids, bocce ball for seniors or anyone who really wants to play, and a water play area which little kids could enjoy.
So the second part of our proposal is the equipment lockers. These lockers would provide short-term usage of sports equipment for people who either don't have or can't afford it. And then the checkout system will be using library cards since it doesn't cost anything to get a library card and thus they don't have to pay anything. And then there are clear doors on lockers so people can see what they're getting and if it's like damaged or anything. And the lockers will be powered by battery or solar.
So here is an example of all the sports equipment we might need in Memorial Park that will go into the lockers. For example, we might need a ping pong set for like the ping pong tables.
All in all, replacing the dried up ponds with activity areas as well as having a sports equipment locker will draw in a wider demographic to Memorial Park, employ short-term and long-term solutions that are low maintenance, and provide residents with sports equipment for free.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing this presentation to us. We're really excited by your interest and all the research that you've clearly put into this presentation. So do we have any clarifying questions from the commission that we might want to ask?
Is part of your project at all looking at budgets and how much some of these proposals may cost?
We have kind of, okay, what? We made some cost estimates, but we haven't shown them on the presentation.
Okay, so that was part of your learning experience as well. That's great. Did you take any surveys from your friends, or were the ideas that you came up just things that your project team would be interested in? Did you survey your families, your peers?
No, we haven't. But like, I've heard a lot of people like they told me that. Well, I kind of just asked them, and they said that Memorial Park looks really ugly, because of the wasted pond space. But we haven't actually taken on like official survey or anything. It's just like a lot of people don't really like it. And when on the first round of our tournament, while we were presenting to like the not random, but like the people who would come to our station and ask us questions, several people, they kept commenting like, oh yeah, I've seen Memorial Park, it's like pretty ugly, and yeah.
It's definitely in need of some attention.
Absolutely. I think it was a great choice and some very interesting ideas, and I'm sure it will feed into when we start looking at our Memorial Park master plan.
Mm-hmm. So do we have any more clarifying questions before we jump into discussion?
Yeah, I have some question. I look at the short-term proposal. There's a lot of nice ideas. I just wondering, so at first there must be tons of new idea from little kids, and how do you decide to choose those 1, 2, 3, 6, 8 final proposal?
So we mostly tried to choose by appealing to a wider demographic, because at Memorial Park currently there aren't many things like for seniors or adults. They're mostly just playgrounds for the little kids. So we tried to add as many things as we could that would appeal to especially seniors, because there's a senior center next to Memorial Park. So we wanted to let everyone be able to have fun at Memorial Park and, replace the ponds, so it would make the park more entertaining.
Yeah, and I noticed that the pond actually is very close to the senior center as a corner. Yeah, good to see that. And I see a lot of nice pictures. Could you share where did you get those pictures and how many research work did you do?
We just got them from the internet.
Okay, I have one question for the pool table. For the other picture, I can see they are outdoor picture, but for this one, I'm wondering if it's raining, how to maintain this pool table. Have you think about it?
We might add a cover to cover it.
Okay, yeah. No more
Excellent.
questions.
So I have a couple of questions. If you had to pick your top 3 of the short-term proposals, which would they be?
Top 3 of the short term?
Mm-hmm.
Ping pong tables, definitely. Ping pong, for the little kids, we need cornhole, and then for cornhole.
Advanced playground.
Playgrounds, exercise stations. That's where they're long term.
So exercise stations, So our top 3 would be ping pong tables, the exercise stations, and the cornhole toss.
Excellent. I will say that cornhole is a really good activity for all ages. I've definitely seen pretty much any age group of person play that game. So that's exciting to see as one of your options. So a couple questions. What are next steps for you? So now you've made this presentation to us to complete your project and the competition. What are the things that you need to do now?
So we probably need to get approval and make sure that we have everything we need for it. And yeah.
And next, we should probably also add getting information and looking at what our friends might like or what others might like, and getting more feedback from the community, like maybe doing a survey too, and probably getting clarifications and checking with the costs and how much things would cost.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for coming. We do want to, now that we've finished our questions for you guys, we're going to talk amongst ourselves on the dais. So you guys are welcome to have a seat, and we'll do a little bit more discussion around the presentation you just gave us. So thank you very much. It was a fantastic and well-researched presentation. Commissioners, thoughts?
Well, like I said, as we move forward with our master plan for Memorial Park, these ideas should certainly be in our toolkit. And we know that we could always ask the team if they had any thoughts. We're going to be doing some more surveys ourselves and make sure that what we look at fits all of our goals, as well as what they were looking at. Probably Memorial Park is a longer-term solution for us, so maybe looking at implementing some of the short-term proposals on an interim basis, because they look like they would be very cost-effective and could have some good payout. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and I read the park master plan actually for Memorial Park for the long-term proposal. I see a lot of options and possibilities, but for short term, they only mention maybe some upgrade or maybe, I think those game table with small budget, we can think about it.
Excellent. And just for you all to see kind of where this fits in, we've been working on a Parks and Recreation master plan. So we've actually been looking at all of the parks in Cupertino, as well as all of the recreation services and facilities that we have. And so we're basically creating a plan that will go into effect for the next 20 to 25 years that will help us shape what the city looks like. And so the information that you gave us today is very useful because we're going to be able to incorporate parts of these ideas into the master plan that we have. We do also have a plan that's specific to Memorial Park that we will be fleshing out over the next about the next year. So your timing is pretty perfect. I think what you had mentioned earlier about some short-term goals or things that we definitely want to bring to the table. I know we've gotten a lot of interest in ping pong tables. I think bringing cornhole in and a couple of the other short-term changes would be something that we could actually implement a lot faster. So what I would love is for the staff to see if there's ways that we could improve and incorporate some of these concepts into Memorial Park before we start incorporating everything into the master plan.
Good. We will definitely be talking about this soon. One of the things we love about the short-term ideas is those are pieces that can stay there, and if there's larger scale projects that are going on in those areas, the cornhole set can be moved to a different location. The game tables and the exercise equipment and the ping pong tables can be relocated. So even though they might be there technically as a short term, it wouldn't be a loss of money by renovating the area. We can just move those to a different location. In the meantime, we find out if they're successful. We find out if people are interested in doing the ping pong or the cornhole sets or those things. So it could be a win-win.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for giving us this fantastic presentation. We'll be looking at your ideas and incorporating them into our master plan, and then also seeing how we can implement some of the short-term recommendations that you've made into Memorial Park, hopefully within the next year. Thank you so much. Excellent. And we will also be in touch as we have questions and we want feedback from you. Why don't we go ahead and move on in our agenda? We can move on, going back to the order, to old business item number 2, the Parks and Recreation System Master Plan, updated draft master plan. This was hefty, so excited to dive into it.
So, commissioners.
Also, do you want to reintroduce yourself for everybody?
I will be happy to reintroduce myself. So I'm Randy Schwartz. I'm the interim Parks and Recreation Director. I've been with the city for about a month, and one of the fun, big projects that I've had to work on lately has been with this master plan and working with Gail Seeds, who's with the city. Just introduced to Cindy Mendoza, who's the Parks and Recreation Director for MIG, and the two of them have done amazing work. I've been in the field of Park and Recreation for 36 years, something like that. I've had chances to work on lots of different types of master plans and see them. This is one of the most extensive, well-detailed master plans I've seen in my career that has specific action items that the city can take, and it is over a 20-something year period. Cindy took the lead with a lot of this on with her firm from MIG, but Gail's done an amazing job of just lifting it through all of the pieces and the city structure and working with the various commissions, even this morning working with the environmental review body and the other night at the planning commission and with the city council. So they'll be giving the presentation and giving a history and update of what it is.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Interim Director Schwartz, for that introduction and your kind words. Thank you very much. We have an overview presentation, which will focus on what's new and different and the input we've received. Cindy will take that away, and I'll be here to answer any detailed questions you may have.
Thank you, Gail. And thank you also for that kind introduction. And if I can just pause for a moment, I'm honored to be back here tonight to be able to present this to you, and also honored to have worked alongside Gail throughout this process, given the tremendous job that she has done in terms of keeping this on track. So with that, we're going to give you a high-level overview of the plan, knowing that you have seen and been familiar with this previously and have provided guidance along the way. The purpose of the plan is to integrate the community's vision and aspirations into a cohesive strategy to guide future development, renovation, and management of the city's parks and rec facilities. We are presenting to you a master plan that is in a final draft form. It was updated in October of 2019, and it will provide direction for the city and the Parks and Recreation Department through the year 2040. One of the things that you mentioned to us when we spoke with you last time is the importance of clarifying the function of this plan. This plan does support the development of annual work plans, budgets, strategic plans, and the 5-year capital improvement plan that are used for annual city budgeting. It's important to realize that while it is a detailed and comprehensive plan, it's not intended to address every single question or to very specifically prescribe what needs to be done in the park system. Instead, it's an overarching guiding document to help the city make good decisions moving forward and to recognize the planning that still needs to be done by applying this as a flexible framework going forward. As you know, the planning process took us through several phases to make sure that we were doing the due diligence in terms of the technical analysis combined with the public engagement and the assessment of community needs, future goals, and moving forward into plan development. The plan is organized as 5 chapters, as noted here in the shorter executive summary, plus 8 appendices. A new appendix has been added, as you notice there, Appendix E, that provides more detailed documentation on each site in the park system. We started with a technical analysis, so we were able to look at each of your different parks and facilities, taking into account the amount of parkland that you have and the different types of parks and their functions, as well as the variety of recreation facilities, analyzing what you had there, what was missing, what the community would like to see, as well as what was needed moving forward into the future. Community representation certainly was an important part of this planning process, starting with the guidance that we received from you all throughout this at multiple check-in points, and also in concert with decisions made by City Council and our project advisory group that represented community members and special interests in parks and recreation from a variety of different disciplines so that we could make sure that this plan represented community needs. In addition to that, we encouraged community participation in this planning process through a variety of forums, ranging from representative surveys through specific check-ins, activities out in parks, and a variety of different ways to ensure that all people had an opportunity to participate in the planning process. Through all of this feedback and through the advisory committee's guidance, we were able to identify 12 outreach themes, which were the key interest areas that we heard most from people in the community in terms of what they would like to see moving forward in the park and recreation system. That feedback also allowed us to craft a new vision for the future. It defines the community's aspirations for the Parks and Recreation system going forward, as well as a new mission statement for the Parks and Recreation Department that describes the business or the activities that they will do to achieve the vision for the future. The master plan identified 7 goals for the future, and these goals guided some of the recommendations that are provided in the plan. They address everything from the conservation of the community's natural resources to connectivity through trails, equity, and the distribution of parkland being an important part of this process, the opportunities to enhance your existing parks and facilities, to look at opportunities to activate parks through programs, events, and drop-in activities, the overarching quality of the park system, as well as the sustainability of parks and city assets through sound management moving forward. The master plan identified several different types of kind of recommendations and opportunities in particular moving forward. These included overarching system-wide objectives and strategic actions that are sort of the policies that will guide decisions moving forward, but also site-specific opportunities for every existing park in the system, as well as trails. We also, because the community had given us guidance on desires for a greater variety of recreation opportunities, looked at those specific opportunities that are community-driven and community-specific to add different recreation elements, and then opportunities to invest in some major facilities desired in the community. In terms of the guidance for specific parks, these opportunities are identified by park type, focusing on needs for close-to-home recreation and neighborhood parks, as well as citywide needs at your community parks, and even those special use sites that provide specific different types of recreation opportunities across the community. We also looked at opportunities to enhance the existing trails in terms of extending and improving connectivity and use, as well as the joint use opportunities for some of the school sites that are helping support sports field needs. In addition to looking at ways to enhance the existing system, we also looked at some of the new major opportunities for parks and recreation in the future. We call these major because they require a substantial investment in not only capital resources, but in most cases, operations resources to be able to maintain and operate and or program these. So these include things such as identifying and providing parks where they're needed in some of the underserved areas of the community. It also looked at opportunities to create a more walkable, bikeable community, as you all have indicated is a primary interest, by providing new trail opportunities. It also looked at some of the major facilities that are desired in the system and ways to address those. These include things such as aquatics, performing and fine arts, as well as a gymnasium and multi-use recreation center. It also looked at expanded services for seniors, given an aging population, as well as teens, to provide more important space for teens and young adults in terms of their development needs. Again, we looked at opportunities to add a greater variety and diversity of recreation elements. Some of these focused on things such as play areas, not only including nature play and water play, but most important to this community and has been presented to you all, the need for a universal, all-inclusive play area. We looked at additional recreation features, diverse features such as Tai Chi courts, programming space pickleball, to be able to make sure that we are meeting everyone's needs in this community. We also looked at the ecological aspects and the ecological function of parks to find ways to enhance those natural resources through native plantings, providing increased habitat. And already, as Gail shared with me earlier tonight, we're seeing the benefits of these vegetation enhancements and restoration and riparian corridor protection opportunities through the community. Because of the community support that we had through this master plan, it was possible for the city to move forward and to start to take plans on what we're calling these early action initiatives. These are some of the key priorities that are able to move forward, such as the group shared with us today, looking at options for Memorial Park, but also starting to look at some trail connectivity needs, as well as finishing the Stevens Creek Corridor Master Plan, expanding those opportunities for teens through partnerships, looking at activating neighborhood parks, and even taking the next step following this master plan at some point on identifying specific strategies and phasings for some projects. The master plan includes short-term actions for these additional recreation elements that were identified as priorities by the community. These include pilot projects to be able to move key ones forward. It also identified short-term actions for these major projects and facilities. I want to be clear that while it indicates that we have aquatics and performing and fine arts facilities on this list, it is not their development that moves forward in the short term, but instead the need to explore partnership opportunities with those partners moving forward that are a way to maximize the efficiencies and leverage resources already available in this community. Funding this vision will take a diverse group of funding resources. It will look at the fact that you will need funding to support capital projects as well as operations, and that some of these funding sources may require voter approval in the future. The plan provides tools to be able to move forward and not only make sure that projects that go forward in the CIP are aligned with community priorities, but also that they are sequenced and phased appropriately to address the highest priority city needs. The master plan was incredibly well received. To make sure that we had all the right details in the plan, it went through a thorough cross-examination with a variety of committees, commissions, and forums to, again, ensure that it had the right details and the right direction moving forward. I had included input through youth and teen forums. We won't share with you all of the input at this point because the last meeting back in January, we did share much of this with you already. If you have specific questions about it, do let us know. But these input from youth as well as the community have been incorporated into this document that you see before you today. It helped us cross-check to make sure that we included the right elements, and even in discussing with the Planning Commission what needed to go forward in terms of new development, it helped us ensure that this plan was on track. It also incorporated your feedback, which again, because you had check-in points throughout this planning process, allowed us just to make sure that not only will we have the right details on the plan, but also know your priorities to be able to make sound decisions for implementation going forward. This feedback, again, as we've noted, includes everything from school partnerships and making sure that we have the support on different types of programs and services moving forward, as well as looking at programming and different recreation opportunities, making sure we are leveraging funding as well as partnerships in an effective way and prioritizing projects appropriately. Your input also, as we mentioned up front in this presentation, reminded us to make sure that we are helping people understand the nature of the plan as well as its function and its ability to provide guidance moving forward. The plan was also thoroughly discussed and reviewed by City Council. Council also provided feedback on specific elements that was incorporated into the document that you have before you today. So based on all this feedback, what's changed since you reviewed it previously? The clarification was added around some of the major new facilities. We wanted to make sure that people understand that taking care of your existing parks and leveraging those assets first is a priority before exploring some of these major new projects. We also made sure that it is clear that the plan is equitable, looks at park needs in underserved areas, and also looks at existing opportunities that have been discussed by others, including the Lawrence Mitty site for acquisition. We make sure that we are clear on the importance, again, of using smaller enhancements first to be able to emphasize what's needed across the park system. We clarified the analysis that was done around geographic access and mapping. There are some changes that are made in terms of just summary elements and the addition of specific park site overviews so that there's more clarity around what's happening at every park site in the system. And it emphasizes a few shifts in actions, again, recognizing this community's strong focus on conservation and how important that is, to add some things with regards to dark sky policies, bird safe design guidelines, and wildlife friendly enhancements. It also makes sure that we are addressing the equity component strongly by looking at updating land dedication criteria, for example, and exploring opportunities to acquire surplus properties, and again, leverage existing resources in the community moving forward to meet some of those needs in underserved areas. We also addressed some of the references with regards to the quality of the park and recreation system, looking at opportunities to provide restrooms at sports fields, as well as elevating and evaluating programs and activities, reviewing rec brochures and things like that, and also considering layouts in terms of paving that accommodate mobile uses for accessibility. Those types of things were emphasized, as well as signage in the system. We also looked at different ways to emphasize sustaining the park and recreation system, including exploring means to accept property and donations to support Parks and Rec, and looking at public-private partnerships, again, as you all have emphasized to us throughout this. More recently, the document was taken back to the Planning Commission, and we gave them an opportunity to again review to make sure that this document was on track, recognizing that we do have some new planning commissioners. We received some additional comments at this point. They did not recommend any consensus. The general sense is that the plan is on track. They appreciated the information that was there. There was a few ideas raised, again, in terms of prioritizing projects in the future, and recognition of the appropriate emphasis of equity on this plan and on the park system. Their input also addressed some of the amenities that can be acquired and provided some specific ideas that we can carry forward into the future in terms of implementation. So with that, we are here today to present to you and to share with you this final draft version of the Park and Recreation Plan that will provide the guidance to create the desired park and recreation system that this community deserves and wants in the future. We are happy to take any questions that you have, and also look forward to the discussion on whether or not you feel this plan is ready for recommendation to Council for adoption. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you both for your efforts in this plan I've been here now for 6 years. So I know you've been working for a long time, and you've had to go through many iterations of this. So thank you so much for all of your hard work. And it's, our hope and goal that we can now kind of push this through its final delivery stages and start actually raising this baby that we're making. If we have any clarifying questions, so not discussion, but clarifying questions about the presentation, commissioners, now would be the time. For those of you that are in the audience, we would love any comments, questions, feedback that you have on the Parks and Rec Master Plan. It is something that's going to dramatically impact Cupertino over the next 20 years. There are blue cards up in the front on the right-hand side. If you fill that out, that is the only opportunity to communicate with us during this meeting. There are plenty of other opportunities that we will still have, but on this specifically, there are blue cards up at the front on the right-hand side. We would love to hear from you. So please, please, please. Up in the front on the right-hand side. I promise we're not that scary. In the interim, while you guys are filling out your blue cards, if you wanted to, commissioners, go ahead and ask any clarifying questions that you might have before we dive into discussion. No questions? Okay, well, I got some, but, I can save it for the next part. Do we have any blue cards? Yes. So then I will ask a couple of my clarifying questions while she's filling out the form. All right, so I was very excited to see how clearly some of the goals that we heard from the community are represented here: conservation, connectivity, activity diversity, which have been really, really important, as well as sustainability. Those are some of the things that came to the top, and I'm very excited to see that here. The emphasis on creating trail opportunities, that's very big for us, making that a priority. Thank you also for the way that you presented, in that this is a plan. This does not mean we're doing every single thing in here. It is simply a guiding light to how we should be making our decisions going forward. Additionally, the question I had around, where did it go? A couple of things to note. If I recall correctly, during our conversation about the cricket field, we're exploring this because the region, Cupertino, is home to the country's #1 youth cricket program, youth cricket league, and that's very exciting. But the only pitch that they have is the one on Library Field, and because of where it's located, it's trampled frequently, which makes it very difficult for them to practice on. Initially, when this was brought up, I'm not quite sure why an international size cricket field was studied, because there's zero space to do that in Cupertino. And the community that had brought this forward had not asked for an international size cricket field because that's impossible. But I did want to make sure that it was reflected that it's not, do not pursue any kind of cricket pitch. It's that the international size was not something we could pursue. However, a smaller practice pitch in a multi-use area, it's actually something you can have overlaying. I just wanted to clarify that that is what the intention is here, right? Because that's not necessarily what's coming forward. Okay.
Yes, that is staff's opinion as well, that is the intention moving forward. It's not an international size, it's a little bit smaller and in a multi-use facility.
Excellent, thank you. And then I will ask the rest of my questions later. Next, we will go to our public comment section. Heather, please come on up. Thanks, I'm so excited. It's my favorite part.
I don't really know what I'm going to say. I've worked and listened to and been involved with the master plan, and I think the main thing I came away with, I have been a resident of Cupertino almost 45 years, and I am very active at the senior center, and I'm here representing the senior center. But I'm speaking for myself. I hear lots of things, I hear lots of surveys that go on, and I have been a proponent of let's get off the stick and start doing things. The little park that I live by, Varian Park by Stevens Creek School, I see over the years, I'm there every day, and I see it just going downhill. It has an orchard attached to it. It is an apricot orchard a lot of the apricots have died out and they've added other trees, but it's not maintained. And it breaks my heart to see it going downhill. I know there's lots of other parks around that have their value, but I don't go to those parks every day. I don't go to Memorial Park every day. After being there a while back, I decided it was totally, like these kids said, ugly. It is just a disgrace, since it is supposed to be the central location of our city and maybe our central park. It is disgraceful. I have no other word to say for it. So I hear surveys that go on that say we need swimming pools and I think we basically have these things, and we just need to work with, like we work with the sports fields, and work to use these assets we already possess, not build new ones, and use what we already have and extend their use. This summer, Monte Vista, I'm a swimmer, and Monte Vista High School opened up their pool for, I don't know that if it was just seniors, but opened up for adult swimming, lap swimming. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Down the other end, they had swim lessons going on, but the facility is huge. And to think that we need to build another facility when that facility is standing there is ridiculous to me. So whatever happens, and I hope it happens soon, as I said to Gail, 20 years, I don't know, I'll be 100 in 20 years. I would just like to see us start something, and perhaps start in small increments, so that our public, people that I see say, well, what's going on? And we can just see it going downhill, downhill, downhill. I would like to see small increments of improvement. Don't cost maybe a lot of money, but just improvements.
Wonderful.
And in a well-timed, sooner rather than later.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heather, for your feedback. It is very important to us to hear back from the public, so I appreciate you taking time to comment. Awesome. Why don't we go ahead and dive into discussion? I do have a couple of other things. Could you expand a little bit more on the dark sky policies as they're one of the newer portions of this since the last time we saw?
Yes, the current council work program is embracing looking at bird safe design and dark sky policies, and my understanding is that planning staff is involved in that, and there has been information coming forward, and there will be consideration of should we update and adapt municipal code or other applicable regulations or guidelines to encourage things that are friendly and compatible with dark sky goals and with bird safe design.
For those who aren't familiar, what are dark sky goals?
It is a goal of avoiding light pollution, and over illumination in evening can have adverse effects, particularly on wildlife species, and even depending on the quality of light on more than that. So there's increasing understanding of how light, artificial illumination at nighttime affects all of us and affects our wildlife community as well.
Excellent. So the other thing I just wanted to make sure, when we were going through the previous part of the presentation, there was a good emphasis on diversity, but as we dove into the newer things that were added, between just the importance of smaller enhancements, just from all the slides on page 14, it felt like there was a little bit of a shift away from that. So I just want to, for my personal sanity, want to make sure that that is still, that diversity element is still a focus, both age diversity, different kinds of programming diversity, making sure that it's available across the city, as well as cultural diversity as well.
Indeed, that is definitely an important part of this process. We heard through community outreach that diversity needs to be expressed in the recreation variety in terms of the programs that are offered, as well as the different types of facilities that are in your system, to make sure that you are meeting the needs of diverse cultural groups, as well as all ages, even different incomes in this community, and just the needs of a variety of interests in a more broad fashion.
Okay, and
if I can just add to that, there's also a lot of geographic diversity in there too, to make sure that we've hit more segments within the community.
Excellent. That's definitely been something that our community members have been very vocal about, and is a need that we should be filling. In goal 3, the equity component, our commission 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, had adopted, had clarified what we mean by the parks, the per person parks and recreation land. So can we talk about that and how that fits into specifically goal 3, equity 3A and B?
I think you're referring to kind of the level of service that Parkland has provided, yes, which is measured in a few different metrics, one of them being acres per thousand population, as well as looking at the distance that people must travel to have access to parks of different types. We looked at equity in a variety of ways. One of them, again, was identifying those areas that do not have access to parks within a 10-minute walk. But we also looked at the amount of acreage that different parts of the community had access to. We considered that both in terms of access to total amount of publicly accessible parkland, so city-owned sites, as well as sites provided by the county and others. But we also looked at it in terms of specific neighborhood needs, looking at neighborhood serving parks that provided at least 3 different types of recreation uses, whether it was social gathering, play, and active recreation or sports, or some mix to that end, to make sure, again, that a variety of needs were being met by different sites. We use those 2 different types of analysis to help identify those areas that are unserved or underserved, even in terms of access to acreage, and that allowed us to identify the opportunities and target areas to focus on acquiring new park sites if the opportunity arises to do so.
Excellent. The last thing that I believe it's the last thing. The last thing that I have is the traffic and parking impacts. One of the things we had spoken about last time was making sure that anything that we're doing around building takes into consideration the kind of impact that will have on the traffic in that specific area, and if there's not enough parking or parking created, that certain kinds of high levels of use facilities may not be best suited for certain parts of our city because they don't have parking, or we're not able to provide that. I didn't see that in the higher level of this, and I think that is something we need to make sure we take into consideration as we build out various parks, is that if there's not a place to put a car, there's not a place for a bus to go drop people off, then that's a big problem, because just looking at even Memorial Park in its current state gets so much traffic. I can only imagine that as we build up the park, it will turn into something that's even greater of an attraction, yet we don't have an infrastructure that's well suited to manage the kind of inbound that we're gonna get, especially with the new Oaks development coming in. It's just gonna be a very high traffic area, and so ensuring that as we look towards the strategic plan and actually implementing some of these changes, we're also keeping that in mind. And then the traffic and parking, and the third component is also, I know right now the city's piloting VIA, but also making sure that there are alternative transportation methods to each of our parks and recreation facilities, so making it something that is accessible to everyone, but also accessible in a sustainable way. So I think that those three things, in terms of it goes along with the connectivity measure, but those three things specifically should be highlighted in terms of the decision making and the rollout that we have for future planning. Great, commissioners, any other thoughts?
Actually, because I'm new to this commission, I'm only here for 1 year, I want to get some clarification of the whole process of this park master plan. That's because in January, in the first meeting, I was here, I remember our director said, we already have all the wonderful ideas and so many great proposals in this master plan. So next step, that will be talking about the priority of all these proposals, because there's so many nice things. We cannot do them all at the same time. We need to do them step by step. So next phase is talking about the priority. But then in summer, after summer, I remember in a meeting, I asked the director for half year. I didn't see the priority discussion in our meeting agenda. And at that time, he mentioned, because we have to wait for the council to adopt the master plan, and then the council will give some guidance of priority. So now I'm just want to get clarification. So which phase we are in for this master plan, and what's the next step, and how the priority can be decided in the future?
Assuming that the commission agrees to move forward with the project tonight, the next step will be going to council for final adoption. This past Monday night, it was at the Planning Commission, and the comments were received here. The Environmental Review Board saw the document today and had discussions and agreed that it could move forward. So the next step would be going to the City Council. Probably at their February meeting is when it would be heard. And if it was adopted at that meeting, the next steps right after that are for staff, for the Parks and Recreation staff and the Public Works staff to get together and, exactly as you said, to work on the prioritization of the projects. Almost taking the approach that the urban green sheep talked about earlier. I think it's the first time ever in a meeting I've said urban green sheep, but they talked about talking about some of the short-term opportunities as well as the long-term plans, talking about which ones we can afford under the current budget, which ones we need to plan a little bit longer for, talking about which of the different projects that are listed here will have the most impact on the most amount of residents and the residents that are underserved right now, and looking at all of those factors to develop a real plan. That would then be coming back to you, and a lot of that would be then incorporated into the city's capital improvement plan and budget for this next year. So those are the basic steps.
Okay, and I have another question. So because I can see the master plan, this version has a lot of change compared to the January version, and I can see you put a lot of effort in doing it. Thank you so much. But another question is, because even for the council to adopt this master plan, it took more than 1 year. So when we're talking about the priority, maybe that will take a longer time. So as just the resident said, she hoped to see some small increments and improvement can be done in time. And like the short-term proposal for the Memorial Park, that's also another good sample to see. We don't want to keep Memorial Park so ugly. We want to get improvement as soon as possible. So is it possible to take action even before maybe something really urgent? We can take action even before the priority be finalized.
Well, the prioritization is what's going to tell us which ones to move forward, and that doesn't have to take very long to do. But we can start talking about which ones can we do immediately. And I think everybody has acknowledged that work needs to be done in Memorial Park at the pond area, and we appreciate the remarks that the students made earlier tonight, and especially cleaning some of those things up. So it doesn't mean it has to be a long, arduous process, but the next step would be to sit down between the two departments. The Parks and Recreation Department does a lot of the programming out in our parks, and here in Cupertino, the Public Works Department takes care of the maintenance and the capital improvements. So we will take the document and all the to-do lists and put those together, but I think that can be done fairly quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So, yeah, as I looked at it, one of the things that popped out at me is where we've replaced the word recommendation with opportunity, and we've done that throughout the entire proposal. And I think that's a really good improvement because I think there was a lot of misunderstanding of what the purpose was of all of this work. And so identifying it as an opportunity definitely reinforces that this is a flexible framework, and we'll still be looking at that. So I was glad to see that. I think one of the new exhibits, and I'm just going from memory, it was a 228-page red line. But at least when it's red line, you only have to look at the red. I think it might be a attachment H that goes through each park and identifies some of the specific opportunities for each location, each site. Is that attachment H? Is that a good guess?
That's in Appendix E, I remember.
Appendix E is the one that has graphic pages about each park with some photos, an aerial photo?
No, it's not
Or
photos.
is it the big table?
It's a table.
Oh, table F1, F2, and F3. F1 is the one about each park site. It's
Okay.
a table. Would you like me to bring it up?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Make sure we're talking about the same thing, first of all.
So is it this table that has, it's a big chart, and
Yes, site enhancement opportunities. I think that's it. I can't read all the details.
Okay,
So
yeah,
some of them, yeah, you've got the short term and the longer term. And some of
Yes.
them, like you might have identified basketball courts at a particular place, and another one, a dog park like at Jollyman. And it seems that some of the short-term actions and goals were broader than any particular site. And especially the all-inclusive play, that we want to look at putting that in every one of the sites if we can do that. So there were a couple of them that I think anytime we look at a park, we want those things. And so I wanted to make sure that this particular table doesn't narrow our focus too much. And is there a way maybe is there another place where it's identified? And I know there were specific places identified that, maybe there's just a statement, we do want to have basketball courts around the city. We also want to have community gardens sprinkled around the city. We want to have off-leash dog areas sprinkled. But here it seems to narrow the focus when you look at this table. Okay. And so I wondered, is there some place that says that more broadly, that these are the things that we want to make sure we're addressing in every site as we go through, because they are the things that we want multiples of?
Yes, Commissioner Stanek, very good point. There is language in Chapter 5 that emphasizes that there are some of these enhancements that we want throughout our system. And table F3 talks about these enhancement opportunities, and it's very hard to read. shrunk
Sorry,
down
can you
the
clarify
size.
which? I'm trying to pull it up on my computer. Can you clarify which of the attachments it's under,
It's in the appendix
or the appendix of the?
of the master plan.
Yeah, I'm trying to like pull it up on my computer.
Yeah.
It's a little difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to go through this.
And, okay. Wait a minute.
And I remember for the Creekside Park, yeah, it's also mentioned when we upgrade the playground for, even if it's not Jollyman Park, I think it's mentioned we can add some inclusive facility.
Yes,
Yeah, for some park, I saw that.
Your point is reinforced in the 4 pages of Table F3 that talk about the enhancements that are available at many, many locations. And we've taken, there's a preliminary identification, some things that belong at every park and some that where the park footprint is big enough. But indeed, this document does say that we're looking to have inclusive play everywhere in time, and that there are desires for other kinds of elements. Nature play can be at a lot of places, and just because one park is kind of an obvious setting, if you look at Table F3, it indicates that many of our parks are great venues for many things, and it doesn't rule out, but it identifies some things that we'd like multiple places. The language also, in talking about community gardens, says we'd like to have multiple community gardens at multiple locations that are geographically distributed throughout our city. We added that language in these tables. They're small and hard to read, but we strengthen the goal of having multiple locations distributed throughout the city.
Okay, yeah, so some of those, you mentioned a couple of them, was, there's the all-inclusive play, nature play, community gardens. I think off-leash dog areas is another one that we should be looking at, and basketball courts as well, because, these are the...
Basketball courts was one of the top across
Yeah,
the board
right.
for all of our research.
Right,
Yeah.
so those are the things that we know are very, our community's very interested in, and they don't want to be driving to get to those things, and so we're looking at them, spreading them around.
Agreed.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that was all I had.
Excellent. So I am comfortable with sending this to council with the feedback that we have given you today. Commissioners, do you have additional feedback that you want to make sure gets incorporated for when before this goes in front of council?
I agree with all this stuff in the packet, but only one thing. It seems the master plan is still a little bit hard to read, especially I find all the concrete ideas, all the concrete contents are in Appendix E, and it's very hard for people to find. If you look at the main part of the master plan, actually you can only get some general idea about our city's goal, but for each goal, there's not any concrete thing in it. I just wondering, can we find a way for people, for our residents, to know they can find the useful information in Appendix E?
So
can we,
just like we have on
easier to
number
read.
9, I think the short-term actions for additional recreation elements, if possible, maybe we can create a very simplified version of possibilities for inclusion in parks and recreation, future planning, and just have almost a running list. Would that be helpful of things that community members have said? So similar to how they have this, just a simplified version.
Oh
of
yeah,
all of the
that sounds a
things.
good idea, maybe. Yeah.
Something very straightforward, so people don't have to read through, all of the efforts behind everything.
Yeah, the intent of the master plan itself was to be more general in the beginning, more specific later on, to lay the groundwork and the justification for the information. And I agree with you that Section E, where it talks about each park and the information listed there. But as the chairperson said, we can definitely come up with a smaller summary that encapsulates that and share that with the public as well.
Yeah, not necessarily for, in my opinion, not necessarily for adoption purposes or lack thereof. It's just more of a way for us to simplify the communication in terms of like, hey, just because you don't see it in this like overarching piece, and it is in these appendices, doesn't mean that that's not going to be included in the actual implementation portion.
Okay.
Great. The final thing is, while I have always been a big proponent of public-private partnerships, especially in regards to the golf course, I would really like to also remind ourselves and hopefully council as well that this is a 20-year plan. This is not just what we're doing for the next 5 years. And so, you know, in 20 years, the city is going to look very different, but that does not mean we shouldn't be putting resources towards building towards that 20-year future and not just thinking fiscally short-term, but actually fiscally long-term as well. We want to make sure that we're building a long-term sustainable community so that people actually want to live here and they want to move here, instead of, you know, overly constraining ourselves because that vision is lost in the numbers of things. I think that we have a great potential here for what we can do with the city, and I'd love for that to be realized over the next 20 years, but let's keep that in mind, that this has a 20-year goal, not just a 5-year spend. Excellent. Any other feedback? Is there any objection to moving this? Director, do we need to do a formal vote to send this to council?
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm looking for a motion to approve this updated draft master plan to send it to City Council as amended.
I move to send to City Council as amended.
Oh, I second it.
Excellent. If we can move to a vote. Excellent. And the motion passes unanimously. This is a big step, several years in the making, and with that, we'll send it over to council. Once council has adopted this, we'll actually get to start making changes in our parks, which is very exciting. Wonderful. Thank you both so much. Tremendous amount of work, and also thank you, Director. I know it's been a whirlwind of a month to get started, but you're on a great part of the journey. So.
As long as I say yes, Gail, and yes, Cindy, everything goes very smoothly. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you both again.
Yes, thank you, commissioners, for all of your work on this over the years and for your support. Could not do it without you. And thanks for hosting the community input and helping this process be successful. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Excellent. We are going to go ahead and move on. Excuse me, there was a request to speak for the agenda item. Unfortunately, the moment to speak for the agenda item is at the beginning of each agenda item. However, please do connect with our staff afterwards so we can make sure to incorporate your feedback into our planning process. Going into new business, subject number 4, status update on the Rancho Rinconada Recreation and Park District. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. And actually, this is a very quick update, just letting you know that along with the master plan when I got here, and this was important, so was Rancho Rinconada. And we do not have any full information to report yet, other than myself and several staff members have gone out and visited the site, received a wonderful tour from the general manager out there, seen all of the internal workings in the mechanical room and all those things. And we will be working with other city staff within the next month or so to talk about different options that are available. And we will come back to you with a much more detailed report at your next meeting.
Do you have any questions? Questions?
So when will be the next meeting, as you said?
Your next commission meeting.
Oh, so in January?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to ask if that next report is also going to include more information about the governance of the area and also the pool and how the pool is being used in that facility.
Those are all the things that we're looking at now. We're looking at the usage, we're looking at the finances that are associated with it, the governance, all of those things. And at this point, we have not had an opportunity to come together as a full staff and discuss the options and make any recommendations. But we should be able to by your January meeting.
Excellent. So for those community members who are watching online and will be watching the recordings later, we will be discussing this at the next meeting. So please, if you are on that part of that side of Cupertino, please do come and share your thoughts. Excellent. Thank you so much. And I believe
we actually skipped.
Oh,
by
I apologize.
number 3.
We skipped right through the confirmation of the January meeting schedule. Why don't we go ahead and discuss that?
So at the last meeting, we had asked if we would have availability, and we have put a hold on that space, if you guys do want to move it to the 8th of January. Oh, sorry, the 9th.
The 9th?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, oh, Wednesday.
The 9th.
We can't
sorry.
handle slight one-day changes. Are you available on the 9th? I'm available on the 9th. Wait, hold on. Let me check that really quickly before I say yes. Are you available on the 9th?
Yes, I think the 9th would be a preferred date, just given public access.
All right. I will need to verify that I'm not going to be out of town, but at this time that does sound like it works. With that, we'll have quorum for the meeting. And because we are also talking about January meetings, wanted to drop this on the director's radar. It would be great if we could have a joint meeting with a joint study session or a joint meeting with City Council in terms of going over this very large document. I have a feeling that it would be very helpful to be in the room when they are understanding this whole process. So if there is a way that we can get a study session on the books with them, that would be great, because that it's a hefty packet.
We will bring that up to the city manager, and I'm sure she will be discussing that with the mayor and the council members.
Excellent, thank you. Wonderful. Are we good to go on the January meeting schedule? Fantastic. Why don't we go ahead and move on to staff and commission reports. Item number 6, receive monthly update from the director and from the commissioners as well. Director, do you have any additional updates that you haven't already shared throughout this entire meeting?
No, I'll let it go for right now.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you. We did, there was a written report?
Mm-hmm.
Is that included in the packet? No?
I don't remember seeing that.
Okay, I'm new to this, we'll figure it out. For now, I'll pass, thank you.
Okay, and we did want to say, we know it's been a hectic month, but welcome. We're really excited to have an opportunity to work with you, especially while we have so many exciting and very dynamic community engaged projects coming up. So thank you for joining us and shepherding us through this murky area that we're seeing. So we really appreciate all the efforts that you've been putting in and look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. You have a wonderful staff in place here. They've got good direction from all the programs that are going on. It's a vibrant community. They've got the resources, so I know that you're in good hands.
Wonderful. Thank you. Awesome. Commissioners, any commission reports since our November meeting?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have something to share.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I attended the mayor's meeting, and there's something about park. Yesterday, the chair of the art commission was there, and she said she would like to see we can cooperate on some event in our park, and they can help us to do something related to art. And we talked about in Santa Clara, they have an annual event for their kids to sell and present their own artwork. And so everything have to be DIY, have to be made by themselves. and the parents can register for a small fee. That's not expensive. And the interesting thing is, I have 2 friends. Their kids joined the event, and their kids attend their art school in Cupertino, because Cupertino has a lot of art school and classes. But so we really hope maybe our city can also hold such event in our park. The Santa Clara event was in their Central Park. Maybe we can have some opportunity to hold it in Memorial Park or maybe Creekside Park. That may.
That would be an amazing incorporation for our neighborhood events program as well, to add something like this into it. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and the chair of Art Commission, Raji, she said she actually was familiar with the event in Santa Clara City. So if we, our staff, decide to have such proposal, she would like to share experience and more information with them.
We can definitely look to put them on the on a future agenda and see how they're doing what they're doing, and see how we can incorporate that.
Okay, and another thing is about the inclusive playground in Jollyman Park. Excuse me. I just remember once we discussed our city, they haven't decided to make it a magical bridge or maybe design by our own. I remember we are waiting for the guidance for our city council, but the mayor said he didn't see such action in their agenda. So I'm just curious which stage we are there, or do we have already decided to design the playground our own, or maybe work with some other?
I believe that they've put out a request for proposal, a request out to potential vendors right now. That hasn't been selected at this time, but they put the request out. So to make to actually select who we work with, they have to make a broader request. So that broader request has been put out, and then I believe it's at the beginning, or I believe it's either January or early February when they will be making that decision.
I think the mayor, maybe he need more detailed information. It seems he's not familiar with this information. Yeah.
Okay, great. Good to know.
And another thing, I talked to them in our last meeting. The staff report mentioned about the swim class, and they said it's a great class. A lot of people want to register, but we are short of staff. And I also mentioned it to mayor, and they just asked, is it possible to solve this problem? How to improve? But so maybe staff need to more communication with our council.
Okay. So I think, I'm not sure if you guys caught the last end of that, which is just that a lot of people there's a great demand for a lot of our swim classes, and people were not having an easy time signing up for it. There was a staff shortage and a couple of other issues that came up, and the mayor did not feel like he was made well aware of the situation, and so to just create a little bit more transparency specifically around that issue, because there were a lot of people who apparently were impacted by that.
Yes.
Did I capture the gist of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Did you have any?
Well, I guess one of the things that was on council agenda this week was the park fees in lieu on the developers, and one of the changes that they made to the general plan was that all parks that were coming from developers must be at ground level. And that never came to our commission. I didn't know if that's something that we could agendize, if it's too late. I think that was the first reading of the ordinance. I think there was going to be another reading of it.
It's my understanding that was adopted, but I can go back and check.
Yeah, that was a first. So I know there's a first reading and a second reading, and I don't know what happens in between there.
I wasn't sure if it was the first reading or the second reading.
I'm pretty sure it was the first.
It was the first.
It was the first?
Yeah.
Okay, I can go back and confirm that.
Yeah,
and I can let them know that you would like to have some input.
Yeah, I don't think the community, we didn't give the community other than the council meeting, so it never came to the commission.
Okay.
So that was.
I can relay that to the city manager.
Yeah, especially because as we try and diversify the kinds of access that we give to different residents, if we bottle it, if we silo the definition so acutely, I think we risk being able to provide the kinds of services and park access that we want to for all geographies inside Cupertino.
Agreed.
Yeah. And then I have been sitting in on some of the Parks and Rec meetings in some of our sister or neighbor cities, and it's interesting that Los Altos is currently going through, the Parks and Rec Commission is very seriously, they're coming up with proposals for off-leash dog areas and dog parks that their city council has instructed them to move forward on, so they're taking a lot of public input on that. They are having a couple workshops in January to get feedback on that for Los Altos. Sunnyvale in November approved the wording for a potential study issue that they'll be prioritizing in January from the Parks and Rec, and then go to City Council. So it's interesting that that issue is coming up in all of our communities, and certainly what I've tried to tell them is I gave them an update for what we're doing in Cupertino, and that it seems to be going well, and some of the things that we changed the hours. Oh, and that was something that did come up last month, that we did change the hours from November through February. Instead of 5 to 7, it's now 4 to 6, I think. And I think the community over at Jollyman was very pleased that we were able to do that, to make that happen. So it's interesting that we're all in this together, and we want to make sure that all the communities have their opportunities, so each particular site may not be overwhelmed. And we haven't seen that at Jollyman, which is a good thing, but we know that there's a lot more demand. And so hopefully Los Altos and Sunnyvale can come along with us.
Yeah, and actually yesterday our mayor said he biked to Jollyman Park several times to look at the dog off-leash park, and he said, everything went well, and the dog was far away from the playground and the trail, and he's glad we started the trial.
Excellent. So did a little recon also on the dog park. It looks like that is going very well. I know the community members are very excited. I also talked to a couple of our community members who weren't all too keen on having an off-leash dog area, and so far they've actually stayed fairly contained to the area that they said that they would. So it's an easy to avoid should they need to. So that was I was very happy to hear that. And also wanted to bring VIA up again. I know that the city's just launched the VIA initiative. It would be really great to publicize that to all of our recreation programs, so that people know that they don't actually have to drive to wherever they're going. They can simply use VIA, and especially for programs that have to do with seniors, because they get a discount. I think it's like $1 or $2 or free. I believe that there's a discount for seniors, though. I think seniors in the city get a certain discount, which I may be off on that, but I'm pretty certain that there's a senior discount as well as a student discount as well. But it would be great to just make sure that everybody in our recreation ecosystem knows that that is something that's available, especially because parking is hard, and as it rains, we don't want to continuously flood our streets with tons of cars, and make it a little bit more traffic friendly in this very traffic constrained area. So that would be my only feedback, and other than that, I think that's it for the commission. Go ahead.
If I can add a couple of those quick things. To be honest, I didn't even realize there was a director's report coming up on the agenda, so I was completely unprepared. And fortunately, Assistant Director Christine Hanel was here to help me out. So I do have a few quick reminders for everybody.
Excellent.
First one, regardless of weather, we will be lighting a tree tomorrow at Quinlan at 6 o'clock, and everybody's invited. Hope you can make it, and hopefully that goes off smoothly. It's a free event. And then Saturday, the Quinlan Community Center has been transformed by the magical elves and the tree and the reindeer, and everybody are ready. Santa will be out there on Saturday morning having breakfast around 8:30, and we're expecting over 300 people that have registered for that event, or about 300 people that have registered for that event. And then a new program, Signing with Santa. Santa knows all languages, but did you know that he knew sign language? And he's going to be out there on the 14th of December in the afternoon. And I think we already have 46 people that have signed up for the event. About around half of those are Cupertino residents, and the rest are from nearby communities where they didn't have an opportunity to sign language with Santa, so they're looking forward to that. And to just add to the dog park discussion, I have been out there a few times. It is in good shape. I think it was well designed in terms of the area that it's at. I've met with Samir out there, and we've talked about it. We've looked at the log of incidents, and there's nothing significant going on that's improper out there. The only caution I would make is that as we continue to have these rains, we need to remind the dog park users or the dog off-leash area users that there will be times when we need to close the field because of the rain.
Yeah, we don't want to damage the.
We don't want to damage it, and not just damaging the grass and things, but that's going to cause ruts, which would then make the area unsafe. It would create the holes where somebody's going, or even an animal could then go in and hurt an ankle or something like that. So when we do have to close the park, we hope everybody can respect that. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so it seems like that is it. With that, we will adjourn to our January meeting at 8:26 p.m. Thank you so much.